May I have your attention? It is with great pleasure that I introduce the afternoon's keynote speaker, Dr. Bill Streilein, Chief Technology Officer for DoD, Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence. Prior to government service, Dr. Streilein spent 23 years at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology Lincoln Laboratory, servicing multiple senior roles. At MIT Lincoln Laboratory, he contributed to technical research, leadership expertise to numerous projects focused on cybersecurity, passive network, traffic analysis, streaming analytics, and computer vision. Today, Dr. William Streilein serves as Chief Technology Officer of U.S. Department of Defense, Chief Digital and AI Office. He brings more than 30 years of experience in the technology industry, primarily in program management, technical leadership, cybersecurity, and business development. To his service in the government to help transform the Department of Defense in adopting next-generation AI and software technologies. If you have any questions for Dr. Streilein, please text those to the address located on the screens. It's a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Streilein for his presentation. Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Aloha. How's everybody doing? Well, I would like to first off say thank you very much for AFCEA TechNet for inviting me to be here today and provide the Luncheon keynote. I'm very excited to be here today to talk to you about AI within the DoD in particular. I have a few set of slides here. I come from academia and I like slides to sort of convey the points. Not too many words, hopefully some very useful pictures to help you understand what we're talking about. I have three main goals in my presentation. I'm going to start off talking about AI, what it is, some frustrations with what people use, how they describe it, and where we are. Just a level set so everybody knows what we're talking about. I'm going to then switch and talk about our recently released strategy. If you're aware, the DoD, out of the CDAO in particular, we released the new strategy for AI adoption across the department. I'll talk about that and dwell specifically on the approach that we have, that we've launched to accelerate the adoption of AI across the department. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the importance of partnerships that we recognize in bringing capability into the DoD. We have a forcing function, which is competition within the global arena, and we need to be able to leverage capabilities as quickly as we can, and we can't do it alone. And so the value of our partnerships is key. Feel free to send questions in, and I'll do my best to answer them. So I'm going to throw a couple of definitions up here on AI, and I'd like you to read the definitions. I'll read them too. And then raise your hand depending on which definition you agree with. So the first, AI is truly amazing. Its potential to transform society and the world by automating tasks, making better decisions, personalizing experiences, and generally making life better for all mankind, make it the most important invention since the printing press. So you can kind of guess what the other definition is going to be. But how many people believe in this definition? All right, that's good. That's a good showing. All right, here's the other definition. AI is nothing more than hype. Recent advances in AI are narrow, only incremental, and it is far from being as intelligent as humans. Progress is driven by corporate interests rather than societal benefit and rarely impact daily life in a positive way. How many people believe this definition? All right, a lot of people didn't put their hands up. How many people think it's somewhere in between these two? All right, good. So I'm in the same boat as you, those people that started in between. That's why I got into this. I went back to school after working in industry for 10 years as a software engineer because I really believe AI is amazing, has the potential to be amazing, and the way that it solves problems that were intractable before with other methods is truly amazing. I wish it were more transparent. That is, wish we had the ability to see how it's solving them, but that will come. But I also believe that we are plagued by hype. We are plagued by hype that stands in our way not only for adoption, specifically in the case of CDAO, but it keeps us from seeing it as a technology. I'm going to talk about some more definitions of AI in a second. I think the hype is important to generate interest, but we have to look past the hype to what it actually is. It is a technology that makes sense of data. That's really what it is. And the technology is getting better and better to make better sense of that data, but we have to be careful not to be drawn in by the hype. Okay, thank you for that quick poll there. All right, now I'm not going to rant, but I'm going to talk a little bit about AI definitions. This is the original definition of AI when the term was coined. 1956, there was a workshop in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, and John McCarthy, who was actually a group leader at Lincoln Laboratory, which is where I'm from, he coined the term as the science and engineering of making intelligent machines. It's simple, 8 words there that I think actually capture in a very simple way what AI is about. Interestingly, he invented that term to sell programs to the government. And it worked. It worked for a little while. And you'll see how we've been through different winters with AI. But it worked. It was a very successful term. And I've spent a lot of my career trying to defend the term, figuring out what it means to me in terms of intelligence and artificial and all of that. Other definitions, here's one from IBM, which I grabbed shamelessly from their website. AI leverages computers and machines to mimic the problem-solving and decision-making capabilities of the mind. And I've got a logo there of Watson. How many people remember when Watson burst on the scenes? It's still there, and it's still a very effective tool, but it won at Jeopardy, as we know. And that's an example of the type of problem-solving that this capability was replicating. And here's another definition from the Oxford Dictionary Online, a little bit longer. Theory and development of computer systems able to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages. Now, I put a logo up here of ChatGPT, not because this definition came from them, but I think the verbs that are used there are getting pretty close to what we might think a ChatGPT, a so-called generative AI, is capable of doing. So as I said, my favorite definition is the simple one at the top, because as we develop new technologies, like large language models, we know they're going to become more intelligent, and it's really just the machine that we're talking about. I tend not to like, personally, definitions that compare to humans, because I think we sort of trip ourselves up there because we start to compare it to humans, and these things don't think like humans. There's analogies in the algorithms. The inspirations do come from neurophysiology, but they're not sentient. They're not aware of what they're doing in the definitions of the words, like aware, or they don't really understand. They work through statistics. And so I would encourage you, as you think about definitions of AI, when someone tells you or shows you something and they say, this looks just like a human would do, tell them to back off and use some other terms, because a human doesn't do things like this. And so that's just my little bit of a rant. I think it's really important to be specific when we're defining this. All right. So when we think about AI, one of the reasons it's important to be specific is it's a whole collection of capabilities. As depicted in this family tree, if you will, AI's been around since 1956. Of course, there were smart algorithms before that, but that's when the term was coined. And we can see in the green boxes all the different areas that intelligent capabilities have been leveraged, from planning, robotics, vision, speech recognition, expert systems. And now we're seeing a lot of work through our large language models and generative AI in areas like natural language processing and machine learning, which is based on machine learning. So I will say what's not on here is actually a large language model sort of capability. If I were to put this on here, I'd put it over to the left, because it is a deep learning algorithm, but it's able to be applied to language, and that's how you get large language model capabilities there. So I love this chart. I was looking for a chart that showed a timeline of the development or history of AI, and I found this online. This is something that a user known as Big Data Queen, who I believe is a research scientist, had posed, but I liked it for several reasons because it captures really important aspects about the development of AI. Along the y-axis, the vertical axis, notice it says popularity. It doesn't say capability. So it says how popular these algorithms are. And that's why I'm bringing that back up as a notion of hype. We want these algorithms to be effective. They can be popular and maybe are not effective. So we want to make sure that we're focusing on the right thing. Having said that, if an algorithm is popular, you may have a better chance of getting funding for it and moving it forward. Now, along the x-axis, the bottom, you see decades going by, from 1956, when the term was coined, and then all the way over to the right to where we are now in 2023. The popularity, and I'm just going to use that as a sort of general sense for how impactful AI may be on society, or what the promise is. You can see at the beginning some of the original, like in 1956 through 1970, there was a rise in popularity which went down pretty quickly. That was when the first algorithms that were able to do things intelligently that we thought weren't possible was rising. And there was a lot of government interest, a lot of funding interest in it, but it actually dissipated relatively quickly. And DARPA in particular stopped funding AI. And that's why you have that hump. Now in the 1980s, a new type of AI came up, known as expert systems. And there were other algorithms as well, but we had solved how to represent logical consequences and predicate logic and things like that to solve problems. That received another boost in popularity. But then we had a second winter. And so the fact that we're on this rise up here, as you can see, in popularity, and notice there are no units in the popularity side. We don't know, is that number of people? Is that just excitement? You might call it hype. But we haven't, a lot of us are worried that we're going to enter another winter because, the earth goes around and winter follows summers and so on. So maybe it's coming, maybe it's not. I don't think it is. I hope it doesn't. But it's interesting that we're riding this wave of capability, if you will, which is appropriate for being in Hawaii. And one of the things to note here is how much innovation is marked here on this graph. Each one of those graphics, those little icons there, represents a new advance in capability, whether it's IBM's Deep Blue winning at chess, beating the best chess master, whether it's IBM Watson winning at Jeopardy, AlphaGo beating the top Go player, Lee Sedol. Each one of these steps represents something that another barrier, another frontier has been basically crossed by an artificial intelligent capability. It's important to realize this because I'm going to get to it in a second. When you talk about adopting AI, you realize what you're adopting keeps changing. And that is at the core of our strategy in CDAO, that we have to be innovative, we have to iterate, we have to expect that what we're bringing in is going to be different what we brought in last time. And that's why I like this chart a lot. Now, where are we going? I don't know. I've seen another chart like this with a rocket on the end. And I don't know whether that means we're going to take to other stars or other planets or whatever. But I think it's pretty impressive. And I'm extremely excited about where we are in AI right now, which is why in those original sort of statements about AI, I'm a little bit leaning to the left with some measured caution there. Okay, let me move on. So, I'm excited about AI. I think we're all excited by AI. The DoD is excited about AI, but we're not the only ones. Everybody recognizes the potential for AI. And if you look here, I've just grabbed some recent headlines. We can see that other nations, adversarial nations, are interested in AI in perhaps a more aggressive way for using this technology, perhaps to dominate the world. As one ruler would say, maybe specifically to demonstrate or show where they stand with regard to AI. It's really important that we recognize this. We can't wait, because if we wait, our adversaries won't wait. So that's something that's really important to me, and I know it's important to folks here. I recently added another headline on here related to large language models because they burst on the scene about a year ago is when ChatGPT came from OpenAI. And the specific headline that I have here was from a magazine online that talked about some of the dangers of large language models. They are incredibly impressive at creating human language. They're trained on human language. They know how to statistically put sentences together, eloquent sentences, convincing sentences, but they're not always correct. And that is the part that's dangerous about them. They do represent an amazing capability. They come from a type of AI called generative AI, which is able to learn the structure in data by itself without a teacher. Now, to be fair, they're learning from language, and language was written by us, by humans. It's text you find on the web, so there is an implicit teacher, but it is amazing what they're able to do. So CEAO is responding to this, obviously, with the mandate to adopt AI across the department. And as I mentioned before, one of the core ideas is agility, which industry knows very well, and we want to bring that into the DoD to change the way things are procured, the way things are defined and leveraged to create capability within the DoD. So this graphic here, I think, really captures our approach at a high level. You can find more details about it in our strategy, which was recently released. At the center of it, let's see if I can find that. No, it doesn't show up there. At the center of the left gear, you'll see we're focusing on user feedback, a product orientation, which is really important, and then continuous experimentation and deployment. This gets back to the fact that we know the technology is going to keep changing. Not only is it going to keep changing, so we're not sure what we're going to bring in, but we've got to keep monitoring it because the technology's effectiveness requires us to make sure it's still having an impact. And we're going to learn every time that we deploy something. This has impact on how we structure our workflows. This is not a set and forget environment. This is deploy and monitor, iterate and learn, and maybe swap out, update. It's very, very adaptive. The outer two rings there indicate responsibility, and that gives sort of a tip of the hat to our responsible AI principles, which embody the ethical use of AI that make sure it's reliable, it's equitable, it's governable, it's responsible, and traceable. Those 5 terms are core to responsible AI and are the way that we want to do it. Now, we want to leverage AI, but specifically, we want to leverage it for decision advantage. That's why we're doing it, and that's our mandate within the CDAO to support decision advantage within the DoD. What does decision advantage mean? It means enhanced battle space awareness, a better understanding of where blue and red are, and what's happening in time quickly so that responses can be made, better adaptive force planning and application, fast, precise, resilient kill chains. Closing the kill chains is one of the key effects, but not only on the tip of the spear, but also efficient enterprise business operations that provide efficient mobilization of the force. Our approach is based on the DoD hierarchy of needs, which we've coined to indicate what are the most important aspects of AI. You'll notice if you look quickly at this, AI is the focus. It's what I got my degree in. It's what CDAO was established for, but it's at the top of the pyramid. The pyramid is based on things like high-quality data and other enablers across the ecosystem that enable us to bring this capability in. So I wanted to walk through this because this is really key. Craig Martell, my boss, he comes from industry. He's worked at several startups in Silicon Valley and has really transformed their operations from LinkedIn to Dropbox and most recently at Lyft. And in each case, he basically did what is depicted here in the pyramid. He made them find which data was most important to their operations, and he made them understand it and turned it into what's known as high-quality data. Now, the department is awash with data, but not all of it is high quality. And so what does that mean, high quality? High quality is data that is usable. First off, it's findable, it's visible when you need it, accessible to those who need it, and accurate and complete. That's the number one job that we have right now within the CDAO, is to enable high-quality data. On the previous slide, I mentioned this focus on products. What we want to do is instill this notion within the DoD culture that data is a product. In previous instantiations of this, we've talked about data as an asset. But what do you do with assets? You hoard them, and you keep them close, and you don't share them. As a product, it sees its value when you have a consumer that uses your data. And so this focus on data products is one of our key areas of emphasis as we move out with this strategy. Moving up in the pyramid, we see that we want to enable insightful analytics built on that data that support decision dashboards at the highest level, but also through all the echelons. And then only when we've got that are we moving into responsible application of AI. Now, it doesn't mean that we're not moving through this pyramid and finding ways and experimenting with it, but we know that nothing above the pyramid will succeed if we don't have high-quality data. So I mentioned enablers. If you look around, it's a little bit hard to read, but if you look around the pyramid, there's a number of things that CDAO is working on specifically to enable this, because just saying data is important, as we all know, is not enough. We have to strengthen our governance, provide playbooks, and remove policy barriers that might keep people from accessing data. We want to provide enterprise services, both technical and non-technical, that enable people to bring AI in. We don't want siloed capabilities, and we do that by making things in an enterprise way. I mentioned the foundational data management. We want federated infrastructure. So federation means interoperability. It doesn't mean one piece of infrastructure, one platform to rule them all, but it's about federating. And when you reach out, you can still get to different systems that provide capability. I'm going to focus in a little bit on the analytics and AI ecosystem in the next chart. But a really important part of this, and one of the key enablers, is expanding digital talent management. That's because we need to upskill the department. We need new career paths within the department that enable people to learn how to use data analytics and AI, and then get acknowledged for that and follow that throughout their career. And I'm here with my colleague Angela Koff, who's around to answer any questions. She's going to help me sort through the questions that come in. But she's really a force and knows a lot about digital talent management. So if you have any questions there. So let me move on now to talk a little bit about the ecosystem. This is a chart, hopefully you can see it, that I put together to describe several aspects about this ecosystem. First off, you see a big circle. That circle is meant to represent technology refresh. It's meant to show that when a capability gets delivered, it immediately gets monitored and potentially refreshed. Now, you can see on the left, I've got DevSecOps sort of indicated, which of course is how you bring updated capabilities in any sort of CI/CD environment. On the right, I've highlighted the partners that play in this. So with acknowledgement of the competitive environment that we have, we need to leverage our partners as effectively and as quick as possible. And so in this vision, the DoD is focusing on its mission, understanding how the capability can impact it, and preparing its data in the way that I described as a data product. That data, if you move around in a clockwise fashion, gets provided in appropriate environments to innovation spaces like industry and service labs to develop this new innovative capability, AI and analytics and things like that. It is then brought back in and assured and tested before being deployed. Now, this is high level, this is notional, but we're already seeing this take instantiation in Army's Luncheon program. How many people have heard of the Luncheon program? They're a major partner of CDAO and one of the first pilot cases, if you will, for us to prototype our services for what's known as AI scaffolding. They want to put pipelines of AI capability throughout the Army. And we are totally behind it. This is really embodying it. So last point I wanted to make on this, just to emphasize the role that partnerships play here. The ecosystem enables us to do this because everybody understands the mission and we're all working together. So my last point here was to talk a little bit about large language models. As I mentioned, they just showed up and I had to change my slide to put a new headline on there. Once they showed up, CDAO started getting peppered with requests for large language models. Can we use them? Is this one safe to use? Can we deploy this one? A vendor told us we can use this one. Can we use it? I want to use it for this case, this use case. So what we did is we accepted all those use cases and cataloged them, and then established what's known as Task Force Lima. Its goal, its purpose, it has an 18-month time frame, is to do these things on the right. First, it's to accelerate promising generative AI initiatives. So large language models are a type of generative AI. There's generative AI for imagery. There's generative AI for other types of signals. Our first use cases are large language models because those are most relevant, I would say. But we're looking at all of them. But I wanted to emphasize the goal is not to stop progress. We want to accelerate those, but evaluate them appropriately, being able to map that capability onto a use case. We want to federate these different research efforts. We don't want silos out there. We don't want rogue capabilities because this capability is so new. We want to understand it. We want to evaluate the use cases and the solutions that come from industry, which is where they're coming from, across these factors of doctrine, organization, leadership, and so on. We want to drive education and bring everybody up to speed on what these actually are. We want to dispel the hype and turn people into critical evaluators of this capability. And we want to ensure that DoD engagement across the whole department, from an interagency standpoint, internationally, we collaborate a lot with our international partners on what this means, as well as the civilian society, so that we implement something, when as appropriate, that is responsible in our use of generative AI. So I just wanted to make a final plug. We are currently soliciting ideas, models, for what we're calling a maturity model for large language models. We have an RFI out right now on our tradewinai.com website, and we'll be holding a symposium in February to hold forth on all we're doing from data analytics and AI, but also a track specifically focused on this maturity model. And what I mean by a maturity model, how many people have heard of the levels of autonomy? There's 6 levels of autonomy from nothing, the human is completely in charge, to the other end where the human just specifies a destination. It's a great model because it allows us to understand where we are, helps us communicate with industry about what we need. We want to do the same thing for large language models. We want to do it for all of generative AI, but we're going to start with large language models. So if you're interested in helping us figure this out, you have an idea for how to demarcate, if you will, the different levels of capability, please respond to the RFI or come and talk to me. And I think that's my last slide. So at this point, I thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to answering any questions you have.
Thank you, sir. First question from the audience. Can you comment on data quality, structured versus unstructured, and its impact on AI capability?
Oh, sure. Great question. So data quality is a great point of conversation within the CDAO. For AI, you need data that is labeled appropriately. Obviously, you need data that is visible, that is accessible, that is understandable. From an AI perspective, you need data that allows you to apply labels to it. Labels are what makes data structured, if you will. In a lot of ways, when someone says they've got unstructured data, it means they don't have labels that help you understand how that data makes sense for the problem that you're talking about. Another definition between structured and unstructured is columnar data versus data that has been collected from a sensor or something like that, the structure of which you don't know, but you know there's some information there. I would say, in general, AI can do a really good job with unstructured data as long as you have those labels, turning it into usable data from which you have a capability there. I wanted to talk a little bit about data quality in general. We have a term within CDAO, which I think came out of the Chief Data Office prior to the CDAO, known as VALTUS. It's an acronym that stands for visible, accessible, understandable, linked, trusted, interoperable, or integrated, maybe it's interoperable, I think, and secure. So those 6 letters, or 7 letters? 7 letters define qualities that we want from data so that we can make progress. And it's what's behind when we say data is a product. The customer should be demanding about their data capability that they're leveraging. Thank you for the question.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Angela.
All right, next question. How do we enable the department to collect the right data sets to support responsible AI-enabled capability?
Another great question. We have a department within, or a section, a directorate, if you will, within CAO that is focused specifically on responsible AI. And they have released playbooks that allow people, stakeholders, to think about what it means to do AI responsibly. And responsible data is core to that. It involves activities prior to the application of the model, activities while you're training the model, and then activities after you've deployed the model or are using it to make sure that the algorithm is still working appropriately. Identifying the right data sets involves several things. It involves a data set that's relevant to the problem, but from the standpoint of responsible AI, you want to make sure that it is equitable, that it doesn't use a bias we don't want. And I say that importantly because bias is actually how these algorithms work. They learn correlations in the data and are biased to an answer based on what they were trained on. So we don't want bias that disadvantages any individuals or any groups. But we do want bias that helps us solve the problem. One of the things I saw recently from a vendor who I really like this approach from a large language model perspective, which can produce biased results, is to curate the data set that the model is trained on. Now, these data sets are huge, and the models take a long time to build, but if you curate that data set, and by curate, I mean you know exactly what's in it, you collect it, you examine it for bias using traditional statistical techniques, and then you keep it separate, you have a really good chance of reducing the amount of bias that could come from the algorithm. I think the DoD should adopt a very similar approach, which is I think what this question is about. We should be working to find the important data that's relevant for the key questions we're trying to answer, identify it, and put it in a place where we can use it again for building other models. Thank you for the question.
All right, next question. What role will CDAO play in providing access across domains to facilitate joint work with mission partners and operators?
Great question. So CDAO is in charge of 2 aspects of JADC2, which is where joint command and control the joint command and control construct is envisioned. The 2 aspects are developing the data integration layer. So it's one of those enablers that will exist in an interoperable fashion across the department, connecting sensors to effectors, systems of different types with other systems of different types, and importantly, command centers of different types. The data integration layer, which is being developed right now, is being proven out through the GUIDE series of experiments, the Global Information Dominance Experiment Series. On a bi-monthly basis, new workflows, new mission threads are being examined and demonstrated to, obviously, the services, but the top leaders to understand how the data integration layer can bring together systems that otherwise couldn't have communicated. Core to the data integration layer is this notion of a data mesh. This is an idea that is a natural evolution of what's happening in data engineering. You've probably heard of data lakes, maybe a data lakehouse, and a data fabric. The data mesh is the next evolution that fits very well with where DoD is in terms of its data. It's based on 4 key principles. The first I've already talked about, which is data is a product. It's not an asset, it's a product. There's a self-service catalog as part of the data mesh that captures metadata around these data products and allows anybody to find the data, find the location of the data, similar to how the internet works, actually, without having to move the data. A third principle is federated computational governance. And what that means is patterns and standards that are centrally decided upon and then locally implemented. It doesn't mean everybody has to speak exactly the same protocol, but they have to follow patterns for interoperability, like specifying your protocol, specifying your API, making it visible so people who find access or find out about your data product through the self-service catalog can access it. And the fourth principle is the data stays where it is. You can imagine in the DoD that rings a really strong bell, because we can't move all the data where it needs to be. And the systems that do that, while they definitely show the value of AI when data is together, don't scale. We just can't move the data where we need to be. We can't move the data into a location waiting for it to be applicable. Thank you. Is there time for more questions? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, all right.
Okay. Next question for you. I don't know how to display this, though. There we go. With regard to the ethical use of AI, you said it must be equitable. What does that mean?
All right. Well, I'm not going to remember the specific definition, so I encourage you to look up the responsible AI principles online. But it basically means that it doesn't contain bias. It's coming at a standpoint. The responsible AI principles are would govern the DoD's use of AI, but also the government's use of AI for civilian society as well. And it means that no group or individual is disadvantaged because of the application of AI. That people, humans, are not suffering from a bias that might have been found within the data and exploited by the algorithm.
All right, next question. How is the CDAO recommending agencies leverage the department's Advana platform for decision advantage?
Advana is a great example of the power of data, of bringing data together into an environment that allows you to readily build analytics in order to support decision advantage. It's been around, I guess, for 7 or 8 years and so on. So we encourage people to follow the Advana model because it can serve as a great example for how data can be collected and then leveraged for analytics that are being built. We see the evolution of Advana, one that supports federated access to different platforms. We don't see Advana necessarily being able to scale the way we need it to scale, so we are working right now to see how what we have in Advana can be leveraged to build out the data mesh. And there's already capabilities inside Advana that will support that, such as an API layer, such as a federated data catalog, which serves as that self-service access as well. But importantly, we want Advana to be a great example of how bringing data together into one environment can readily support the development of analytics and the application of things like AI to provide decision advantage and decision support.
All right. What would the best way, you mentioned earlier the AI task force, sorry, not the AI task force, but the
Task Force Lima, right.
What would the best way to contribute to the task force now be to assist with the integration of AI in the DoD?
Great question. We've got so much interest in Task Force Lima. Captain Xavier Lugo is somewhat of a celebrity. You've probably seen him. I work very close to him. His office is right down the hall from mine. He came up with the name, came up with the logo, and he's really owning it. It's really great. We want to hear more use cases for large language models and generative AI. We want help in understanding how industry is working with large language models. There are many vendors out there who are creating incredible solutions based on large language models, whether they're models that are locally hosted or models that come from a service such as OpenAI. We want to hear about how industry is solving some of the problems that we've and others have identified related to hallucinations, to security, to OPSEC. So within the DoD, it's a difficult thing to engage with a large language model that isn't inside the fence, if you will. How do we engage with a model that is so powerful, but we can't share our data with it? So I would say we actually had an RFI out about this where we solicited responses from industry about how these problems were being solved. I believe the RFI is still up on our tradewindai.com website, although the time has expired. But if you have ideas in response to, I think there were 9 questions, please, we'd love to hear about how industry has solved these problems and is solving them for their customers, or ideas that they have. We'd love to hear about a large language model maturity model that I mentioned before. And then within the DoD, we want to hear about use cases that people have for large language models. We believe this is a profoundly, just an incredible capability, and we need to figure out how to use it. You know, Craig says he loves large language models as a scientist, but as somebody responsible for the deployment, he's not quite there yet because he needs to figure out how he can responsibly endorse them. Helping us get to that point where we understand quantitatively what these things are capable of and how their capabilities measure against the workflow is what we need to do in order to enable it to be leveraged. Thank you. Great question.
All right, next question, and I think you'll have some good feels about this one. Data collection is one of the costly parts of AI training. How do you see the government facilitating data collection and or sharing those data sets?
This is one of my favorite aspects about AI that is sort of under or behind the curtain. People don't really realize. I got my degree in AI. Took me 5 years to do this at BU. The common phrase now is people spend 80% of their time when building AI working with the data. And I can tell you that is absolutely true. During my degree, I had to rename my data, relabel it. I had to reformat it. A data management platform is something that is necessary to build models, but you don't actually hear about it. So it's one of the most costly aspects, not only because you have to move it, because you have to manipulate it and find out how to create the features, so-called features, which the algorithm feeds upon. But the labeling is probably the most expensive part of data collection. There's identifying which data you have from a sensor, there's bringing it in, and then putting labels on it that say to the algorithm, this unit of data represents this aspect of my mission. Like, this picture contains a tank. This picture contains a plane. That is expensive, and right now, the best methods are done by humans. There are automated algorithms to do this, but you're back into this, and I'm a big proponent of this, but you still need a human on the loop to make sure that the labels are done correctly. So now this relates actually to the earlier question about curated data sets, or how do you make sure you've got data sets that are collected in a responsible way. Once we've done the hard part of labeling the data and collecting it, we should share that, because the models that can be built off of that can have impact across the department. Being able to label them with labels that are relevant to all parts of the DoD is one of the big challenges that we have, and it's about finding common terms that we can use to describe these important aspects, these important elements in our data sets. So I think this is one of the key things that CAO will do in enabling the data integration layer, or the data mesh, because once those data sets have been found, collected, labeled, they can now be accessed via the data mesh, which is instantiated in the data integration layer. All right. More questions?
I have a bonus question.
A bonus question.
I have an alibi. So there is a question that came through about the recent EO, the executive order that came through about AI and its role in the department writ large. And the question generically, and this is more of a what does Dr. Bill Streilein think sort of question. It said, historically, regulation stifles innovation. However, in the case of AI, what are your thoughts about the role of the CDAO and its policies surrounding the adoption of AI-enabled capabilities, and how regulation may assist in that adoption? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. Thank you for that bonus question. I would say that, I can bring it right back to the large language model. I think I would love to see large language models providing capability across the department as soon as possible. But to do that responsibly, we need to have an understanding of what they're capable of. And I think the policy that was referred to, the regulations that were referred to in the executive order, describe metrics and quantitative expression of what we need for these algorithms to be able to do for us to deploy them responsibly. And so I'm very optimistic First off, that because we identified that this was something that needed to be done, and that we're already on it through Task Force Lima and our interaction with industry to decide and find out what those guardrails are so that we can basically leverage this capability in supporting our mission. So I was very encouraged by that, and I think that we're on a really good path, and I really hope everyone can help us get there. Thank you.
Can I have a final alibi comment, too, just to follow up on that?
This is Angela Koff. She runs our digital talent management, just so you know.
Yeah. If you're looking for help, please come find me. The EO task force, the actual AI task force, that was I was actually personally part of it too. So we do, another question that came through was, how is the CDAO actually connected at the Hill? And we do have regular engagements with Congress pretty often, and we are proactively managing the messaging and the needs of the department in those conversations.
Great, thank you. All right, I think that's everything. Thank you very much again for the opportunity to present and for all of your questions. Thank you.
Hey, Dr. Streilein, thank you on behalf of AFCEA International and AFCEA Hawaii Chapter for being with us here today. We appreciate your comments. You've given us a lot to think about as we look to innovate and adapt and integrate this emerging technology for DoD use. So just as a thank you, we are going to provide a gift in your name to the Friends of the Windward Wounded Warriors.
Excellent.
And also, that's not it. I have other things for you. So we are going to give you the coveted challenge coin celebrating AFCEA TechNet, the 38th AFCEA TechNet, and one celebrating the 70th anniversary of AFCEA Hawaii Chapter here in Hawaii. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And please give your attention back to our MC to tell you about the rest of today's program that I know you don't want to miss.
Doctor, thank you for the outstanding presentation. I don't know if I feel a little smarter, a little dumber when it comes to AI technology, but the bottom line is that the work you and your team are doing is extremely important, so thank you. Before we depart, just a few admin items. For parking, Tricentis is providing parking validation at booth 416. So 416, get your parking validation. So thank you, Tricentis. At 1400 in South Pacific Ballroom 2 and 4, please be sure to catch the industry panel titled Innovation at the Edge, a view of industry on technical integration, acquisition, and policy doctrine, and cross-service challenges and opportunities. A networking reception supported by Akamai, Mantech, and Red Lattice with drink tickets by Red Hat will be held at the exhibit area at 1500. At 1545, we'll be presenting our IDEA senior leadership panel titled Moving Towards Zero Trust Cybersecurity. Principals in the Tapa Ballroom 2 and 3. There'll be an idea reception following the panel, generously supported by Sienna and Fed Data. All are encouraged to attend. And just one last thing, just one more note for the download the AFCEA TechNet Indo-Pacific 2.3 app for all listings and events during this conference. That app has provided me an opportunity to reconnect with AFCEA colleagues, both new and former colleagues throughout this conference. There's no membership required for the app, and it's free, right? So thank you for attending.